Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Randall Miller, Director of Dance Programming and Special Projects for the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, and the co-director of the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival. On behalf of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust and the Humanities Center of Carnegie Mellon, I want to welcome you to the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival at Home. I'd like to take time now to invite our co-director, David Shumway from the Humanities Center of Carnegie Mellon, to say a few words. Are you there, David?
I'm here. Since 2015, the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival has been bringing smart talk about stuff that matters to Pittsburghers of all walks of life. We are pleased to be able to continue that today and every Friday this month, despite being unable to meet in person.
Thanks, David. I'd now like to take a moment to introduce Dan Fitzpatrick from our presenting sponsor, Citizens Bank. Are you there, Daniel?
Hello, I'm Dan Fitzpatrick, President of Citizens Bank for the Mid-Atlantic region. I want to thank you all for tuning in to the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival at Home. All of us as citizens are committed to the success of our customers, communities, and local economies, and we're proud to support the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival at Home because it provides meaningful dialogue and connection on our deep cultural richness and diversity right when we need it most. It's often said that challenging times bring out the best in people, and we hope that these interviews with artists, academics, and intellectual innovators working to make Pittsburgh a better place will lead you to think, question, reflect, and aspire to not only understand what's happening in the world around us, but to take meaningful action to help bring about change. So thank you again to the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust for hosting the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival at Home. We're grateful for your leadership in galvanizing us to talk about these critically important issues and look forward to joining the discussion. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan. And thanks to Citizens Bank for their support. Financial support is a critical piece of our ability to produce programs like this. And the Pittsburgh Humanities Festival is a very special activity. And if any of our viewers wish to make a financial contribution to support our work, please consider going to www.trustarts.org/supporthumanities. Please be aware that our speakers will answer a few audience questions at the end of the discussion, so please post those comments to either Facebook or YouTube. We'll be reviewing them, and we'll be selecting a few of them for the conversation portion at the end. I'll now hand it over to David Shumway to introduce our speakers.
It is now my pleasure to invite you to join in the conversation with Robert Wideman. Mr. Wideman will discuss his amazing journey of walking out of prison after 44 years, including moments of joy and trials and struggles of reintegrating into life after spending so many years being incarcerated. He'll be interviewed by Elaine France, who is professor of history at Kent State University. She's also an activist who teaches classes in prisons and collaborates with incarcerated people. Robert and Elaine.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, thanks for having us here. So Farouk, I guess we're going to be talking about a period of time when I knew you actually. So it's a really fascinating moment in your life, which is when you got out of prison after 44 years, after having been in since the mid 1970s. And so I guess what I want to ask first is, what were you expecting? Like when you were still in, and what did you think about that getting out would be like?
Well, I had all kinds of visions and ideas of what it would be about. Mainly in the beginning, I wanted to get to see family and friends. And so that very first day, I did get to see family and friends. After that, it was real slow because I came out into a halfway house called the Renewal Center in downtown Pittsburgh. And it was days before I could go out at a building again. So it was almost like going from a minimum security prison to a more minimum security prison, where there were no more bars on the windows and the doors weren't locked, but I wasn't allowed to go out of them. So, but I was finally back in Pittsburgh. And that first day when family and friends came, it was extremely exciting. I probably did more crying and laughing than I had done in years in that hour and a half that we all had together. Maybe it was 2 hours. It happened so fast that it's hard for me to actually put a time limit on it. But it was a beautiful moment. But expectations, I was just wide open to see what the world had for me. So that's pretty much it. I know folks will have questions about it, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you some stories if we get a minute.
So, what were those after that first couple of days? What about the first few weeks? Like, what were some things that surprised you, or just like how the world had changed that you noticed? Things that was difficult to adjust to. Things that, since the mid 1970s, what were the things that you were most surprised by? You got out.
Well, the landscape of the city had changed so much. There was still a lot of the same buildings, but they had different fronts on them. When I did get to go around the city a little bit, early on, I was mainly on the bus unless someone came to pick me up. And so I would ride through old neighborhoods, and the condition of some of those was heartbreaking. From Homewood, and seeing Homewood was heartbreaking. It just was some of the streets that were really nice streets when I went to jail. Now the porches were leaning and the roofs were collapsing in on themselves. And so that was disheartening. But I'll give you a quick story. Maybe the first 2 times I went to downtown Pittsburgh, the Renewal Center is in Pittsburgh. Everyone knew I was home because I did a couple of interviews by then on local TV stations. And so people, guys from prison, people I hadn't seen in 44 years were running up to me, hugging me and calling folks across the street, "Hey, here go Farouk. Robbie's home," because, some people that knew me in prison for all those years knew me as Farouk, but my name was Robbie before I went to jail. And so I'm getting all the different names. And the funniest part is most of them, I don't know what their names are. Faces look familiar, some of the guys I was in prison with, but the people that I hadn't seen in forever, they had saw me on TV. And, because of my brother and because of the book we wrote, Brothers and Keepers, we had a lot of people that saw me, but I hadn't seen them. So my face looked familiar to them, but they didn't look familiar to me. So, you know how you see people, you have to fumble over it. "Oh, brother, what's up, bro? Hey, sister, how you feel, girl? I'm so good to see you." And then all the time my brain's going, "Who is this? What is her name? I know her. This is a..." So, yeah, that was really exciting and made me feel like $1 million. That people missed me.
Yeah, you had that one story of going to a restaurant and just having everything.
Oh, yes. There's a restaurant in Pittsburgh. I won't do a commercial for them, but a friend of mine comes and gets me and says, "Come on, man, we're going somewhere." I said, "Where we going?" "Just come on." And I'm like, "All right, but where are we going, man?" "Oh, you're going to love it. You're going to love it." And so he takes me to the restaurant. And when we walk in, there is, I don't know, 20, 25 guys. And these are guys I had done years and years in prison with. Some of them were actually my old head. Yes, there are people older than me. And it was just fabulous to walk in. The whole restaurant was filled up with them, And, they all jumped up and hugged me. And as we're there, a couple more guys showed up. One of the best of my friends that had been in and out. There was times when I thought he kept coming back just because he wanted to hang out with his buddy. Because for a while he was coming back, but he's doing great now. I call him my rich friend. He owns a parking lot in Shady Side, so you know he's making a lot of money. But seeing him walk in there that day was like, wow. Because the stories that came to prison that he was dead, and like I almost jumped out of my skin to see him. It was just a beautiful moments to see people you hadn't seen in so long. And again, they were all so happy to see me. It was
and
really gratifying.
This is like more trivial or lighthearted, but it was really powerful for me. I had the chance to see you in a couple of those first days, and the seatbelt story is one of my favorite. When you got into my car and it was dinging, and I thought, what is wrong? I thought, oh, he hasn't put on a seatbelt. I said, you have to put on your seatbelt, and you had no idea how. Right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you were looking for the lap belt. And then, ultimately we had to pull over, and we had to talk about how important seatbelts were, because a lot of changed in the mid 70s, or going to that restaurant, and having just a lot of foods that they didn't have in the 70s, and they wouldn't have in prison. Right.
Right.
So you talk about things like that you just like encountered, that you were just surprised by.
Yes, absolutely. I can remember asking you guys, well, what is that? And what does it taste like? What kind of stuff does it have on it? Because I had no idea. Looking at this menu, I hadn't sat in a nice restaurant and looked at a menu in half a century.
What is feta cheese, right? Or what is sun-dried tomatoes? Or
yes.
Yeah, like it's just like, oh, it's just everything was kind of like very new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was comical, I'm sure, but there were other times like that. The digital world has left me way behind. I had not ever picked up a cell phone in my life until I came out of prison in July the 5th, 2019. Never had one, and when they gave me the cell phone, I was like, what do you do with it? I mean, I knew what they were. You heard about them on TV. I seen people on TV with them. And I had no clue what to do. My son had been telling me, because he knew I was coming home prior. He said, Dad, you just got a lot to learn. I'm going to have to show you a whole lot of things. And so, even now, computers, I had taken computer classes in the 80s, like mid 80s, when they still had database. And I took classes with Pitt, but database was the newest thing going. So you don't even hear a database anymore. I don't think they use it in computers. And so they took all our computers away in prison, by the way. And that was a sad day. But yeah, so when I got home, I was totally lost, looking at cell phones, computers, and I'm still fairly lost. But I'm trying my best to catch up. Yeah, there's a lot of things I want to do and a lot of things I'm trying to do. So I need to be caught up. And I'm actually trying to help other seniors in high rises learn about the digital world. So I'm working for me and I'm working for them. And so a lot of things.
On a more serious note, how much support when you got out, and you talked about when you first got out, you were, in the halfway house, and that was for several months. But in general, like, how much support did you get for the adjustment, and like, what kind of facilities do we have in our state to make sure that people know what to do when they get out and they're able to do the things they need to do, and what kind of backup?
Well, I don't want to downgrade the state. I mean, I'm the first guy to make commutation in Western Pennsylvania in 25 years. And so a lot of people helped me and were a great asset to me. So I don't say this to downgrade, but the truth of the matter is I got very little assistance from the state. I mean, they put me in the halfway house. And after a week, they let me out for 4 hours and said, go for what you know. Go out there and figure it out. And, again, I was blessed. I had family. They couldn't wait to do for me and show me things. I had friends that had got out of prison and turned their lives around. I mean, really turned their lives around, had done well, and, now own homes and were married and had automobiles. And I would see guys and they would give me money, and family would, take care of me. And so I had a lot of support from people that I knew. But I went to one organization that's in downtown Pittsburgh. They had me come back 3 times. And when I finally left the last time, a lady, a real nice lady, that really wanted to try to help me, but just didn't know how. How do you help a man? At that time, I was 68 years old, just out of prison after 44 years. Didn't know much about the digital world. They had to help walk me through the computers to try to get in this program. And in the end, she walked me to the door. She was such a nice lady. And saying, well, we don't really know if there's anything we can do for you in this program. And we got all the way to the door, and there was a tall black man in a doorman's kind of uniform. She said, well, maybe you could do a job like this. You could be a doorman. Now, for all my years in prison, I was a pretty much athlete. But in my later years, I had hurt my leg, and I can't stand up for very long, which I told the lady. But she was so set on trying to help me, but so sure that she couldn't, that was all she could think of. I could be a doorman. I said, thank you, that's a good idea, and walked on out, because it was like a week of disappointment. And that's just one instance. And so, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that.
Well, and I think when you have so much experience doing all sorts of professional jobs within prison, and people don't appreciate that. And one thing you did was math teaching, right?
Yes.
At a very high level, you were teaching college level math in prison, which you think, oh, there must be some way to use that, on the outside as well, and which kind of leads me to the next question, which is, you lived 44 years in mainly in Western, but in coming out and kind of rejoining the rest of the world, you're also leaving behind the place where, I don't know if you want to call it your home or not, but the place where you lived for 44 years. And so my question is, how do you feel about, you can't go back there, right? You can't go visit or anything like that, as I understand it. How do you feel about the people that you've left behind? How much do you think about them? How much are you in touch with them?
As you well know, Elaine, we started a think tank in prison. We had the audacity, myself, because I was a lifer, and I told you I had to make commutation. But we had the audacity, me and 5 other lifers, and a professor, I hope no one minds if I say his name, I always do, Norm Conti from Duquesne University, who was doing inside out classes. And we created a think tank. I won't try to explain what inside out is, but it's just a program that college students come into prisons and have classes with inmates. And so then we started the think tank. But we had the nerve to think we could start a think tank about restorative justice, and that we could change our community, that our voices could get heard outside. And so leaving those guys behind, the day I left, the prison I was at, none of them were actually there, but there was a few guys that I had done one almost every day his name is a funny name, you'll laugh, Milky Way. I couldn't, when I left that morning, they were all up on the tier right over the bottom tier where you leave out of their block. And they were all hollering at me. And I couldn't look back because there was tears in my eyes. I mean, it hurt to leave them. I was happy to go. I had been smiling and laughing all the way up to that moment when they was hollering, okay, man, take care, you know. I couldn't look back one more time. I couldn't look back. You know how you always look back one last, I couldn't do it. And so I've stayed in touch with them. And one of the things we've done with the think tank since I've been out, and now we're connected to Duquesne, and where there's a lot of professors. Elaine, you've been with us for years and years and years. And now there's new people. There's former FBI agents, drug force captains, you name it, police officers, all walks of life, people that are involved in this think tank. And one of the things that I emphasize all the time is that we got to get some of them guys out. And you and a number of other people have helped try to get some of them guys out. And there's one that's pretty close. And we're thinking maybe this year coming, he might make it. And there's another one who is the most spiritual person I ever knew in my life. And I'm going to say his name out loud. His name is Malachi, and he's ill now. And I'm hoping and praying that there's some way he could get out. Not only does he deserve to get out, but the world needs this man and doesn't even know it. And you know that, Elaine. The world needs him, doesn't know. And the other one is right behind you. He's gone. He died.
Khalifa.
Sorry to break this up. We have time for one more question before we open it up to our audience. And audience, please start dropping those questions in the comments on either Facebook or YouTube so we can have Farouk address them in a couple minutes. And I'll see you guys then.
Okay, so I have the last one. It's the one we expected. You expect is coming, which is you happen to get out. That's probably not a total coincidence, but sort of right before the Black Lives Matter moment. As Black Lives Matter was at its beginning, right? But before the horrifying killings of George Floyd and the discussion of the horrifying killing of Breonna Taylor. And my question is, as a person who has the experiences that you do in your life with incarceration and with the justice system, what kind of insight does this give you on, the Black Lives Matter movement that you might be able to share with us?
Well, for a lot of years, I went to the law library and tried to get out of prison, and finally was successful. I went back to court, got a new trial, and was supposed to get out, went back to the prison with bond papers in my pocket. And I'm saying this to tell you that I didn't make it. I wound up doing 20 more years. I could have got out of there then as a fairly young man with a lot of things I'd learned, talents that I could have used to create a life for myself. But I didn't make it. And it taught me that justice and the law are not the same thing in this country. The law can let us down. Justice is what it is. And the people that I'm connected with now, we keep pushing that arc that King spoke of towards justice. And what's happening now, it's been happening, to Black folks, as we all know, since the inception of when they first brought us here on the slave ships. We've been under second-class citizens. I don't know, third class, I don't. But, we're at a point in time, I've seen a lot of changes. I was there in 1968. I went to all the protests. we're at another pivotal moment like that, where great change could happen. Great change happened then, but it was slowly eroded and taken away. Now we're crying about voting rights. The same things that we thought we had won then, we're fighting for again. And it's disheartening, but I refuse to, throw in the towel. I'm out there now, still working on getting people voting rights, going to places because I am a returning citizen. I can go to places and corners that most people, even people doing, helping people vote, can't go to. And we're getting ready to go to some of the hottest spots in Pittsburgh over the next month and try to get, guys and girls that are out there in the street. They may be living the wrong way, but they still got a right in this country to have their say about who should represent them. And we are determined to keep it up. And it's because of film, it's because of that digital world I talked about that people keep seeing things like, what happened to George Floyd and, Breonna Taylor. And we see the actual things happen to people that it's shocking the conscience of America again. Just like the dogs biting us in Mississippi and Georgia, in the 60s, and watching the police beat us back across the Pettus Bridge, shocked the nation. Well, what's happening now is shocking the nation again. We're still suffering from that original sin. And we all want it off of our hearts, at least all of us that still have a heart and aren't affected by the disease of, and don't get me wrong, we're all affected by the disease of racism. But some of us a lot worse than others. But most of us still have enough heart to believe we can make a change. And so we're at it again. And I'm just so honored and privileged and blessed to be out here, trying to do that with them.
Thank you. So the first question I have here is, you mentioned earlier briefly your books. Can you talk a little bit about them and maybe where we can get them?
Well, the first book is reissued again for the third time, that me and my brother John Edgar Wideman wrote. And I actually wrote the afterword in that one just recently for this new edition. And it's just coming out again. I think it's next month. So, look on the shelves, go to Amazon and see. And the book that me and the other 5 lifers in prison wrote is called Life Sentences. And it's sponsored by the Elsinore Bennu think tank. And I must say, while Elaine's here, I'm going to put her on the spot. If it wouldn't have been for her efforts and her vigilance, we wouldn't have never got it done, because they had broke us all up and closed down the Western Penitentiary and sent us all over the state. But she still had all the stories that we used to tell each other in the think tank and the writings we decided to make. And we decided to do this book. And she held on, and a few other people. And it's a book I would love to see many people read, because it would show them that, we're not all bad. All the guys in prison are not monsters, are not going to come out of prison and be animals of some sort or predators. That these are men, the 6 of us, all we ever wanted to do was make the world better. And all of these guys, I've heard their stories, and you can read some of their stories. And I think you will see the humanity in every one of them. So It's called Life Sentences.
Thank you. Next one comes from a comment that's not really a question, but I'm going to frame it as a question from username Peachy Wimbish on YouTube. Her comment was, or their comment, I'll say, we need reentry programs for people who have been incarcerated for decades. I guess I'm going to build that into a question as into Farouk, what do you think would have been helpful as a program for you to transition back after coming out?
Well, the think tank has been a big thing. There's things that we're trying to do. We're actually getting ready to start what is called the House of Life. I mentioned those guys that got out before me that I knew in prison 25 years ago, 15 years ago, that are now real successful. Well, we have an idea, and it's based on an old Egyptian model. There was a house in all the old neighborhoods, and all the wise men would be there. And so we're going to collect all these men, these gentlemen that are now successful. Because just like all recovery programs that we know about that are successful, NA and all those kind of programs, it's about one addict helping another. We believe the most help returning citizen, or as some folks call us ex-cons, we don't really like that term, needs another returning citizen to help him. And we have a whole group of guys that are willing to put forth time and effort. And so we're trying to build a house or buy a house and set it up like what they call a 3-quarter house, where men will come there. We'll have some of these older gentlemen that want to be a part of it. We'll have maybe one of them live there, and the rest will spend, a few days, a month. And, I'm talking about 20, 30 different men. So it'll be enough time for each of them to be there. We have one brother that's designing a program that's already approved to teach guys construction work. I'm going to be teaching some of the math classes for that program as soon as, COVID got everything tied up right now. But we're already sponsored. We already have grant money, but we're just having a hard time having people inside in classes, just like with the children. So there's a lot of things that we can do with reentry. And we're trying to do that. And that's just a quick sample. And I know we're short on time, so I can't go into a longer explanation, but it would be very interesting. And hopefully you'll hear more about it as time goes by.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question that I'm going to ask, and that is, you mentioned about how returning citizens and people who are incarcerated are human, and what's a really human story that you might have from your time in incarceration that you might want to share with us?
Well, one of the things I've seen violence happen in the prisons when guards were attacked. I used to work in the hospital for a long time. A woman was attacked, and I seen the people that should have helped her went the other way. And it took inmates to save her. And I've seen it, even with guards, where, we would step to guys and kind of try to hold them back and say, man, you got a family out there. You want your life. Don't give it away at this moment of anger, man. And stop things like that, And I've seen and spent time myself trying to help addicts in the therapeutic communities that they have down there. I've seen men save other men's lives. I stood down at the bottom tier and watched a guy struggling, trying to jump over the 5th tier, and other inmates holding him down, screaming for help. And we all ran up there and helped and had to bring that man down and get him to the hospital because he wanted to take his own life. So, I've seen a lot of acts of humanity. Some might call it heroism, but, I think we're all heroes when we get the chance to be in the right opportunity. It seems to bring the best out of all of us. And so, why I say, we're as human as the next man. And I've seen the change in men over time. It is miraculous. And I still see these guys come up to me and tell me how much I helped them in classes. And I know they go to other guys that helped them in different ways. So somebody told me once, the best way to help yourself is to help somebody else. It's a lesson I've been trying to pass on for, almost 30 years. And, it was passed on to me, and I've seen it in action many times. The most human thing we can do is try to help somebody else. And there's a lot of that in prison, more than what people would suspect.
Thanks for sharing that. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Humanities Festival. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation despite the pandemic. I can say personally that it was the one core conversation that I was most looking forward to, and very grateful that we were able to have it happen. For those of you who are watching now live, this will be up on www.trustarts.org/smarttalk for at least the month of October, and probably longer than that. So if you'd like to share that, I would hope that you would. Thank you to Farouk and Elaine for taking part in this conversation. And I have to hit you up one more time to please consider a financial contribution to help support the mission of the Humanities Festival and the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust at trustarts.org/supporthumanities. I hope you'll join us next week and throughout the month of October for more smart talk about stuff that matters. Thank you again for watching, and looking forward to seeing you out throughout the month. Have a good night.